To the Obeidallah Show on Substack Live. I'm very happy here to have with me Julian Zelizer. Many of you know him for his years on CNN. He is a professor at Princeton University and author of numerous books, now a columnist for foreign policy. And to give us a historical point of view of what we're navigating through. Hopefully, there's some lessons there. So, Julian, good to see you, my friend. It's been a while. And Julian's got a great Substack called The Long View, which I literally recommend. I've literally recommended it on my Substack, but I recommend it here as well.
Thank you. It's great to be with you. It's great to talk to you this way. We've talked other ways, but this is great. So thank you.
So let's talk about a few things. One, from a historical point of view, we've talked in the past. There's been a lot of modern era presidential scandals. There's Watergate, Iran Contra, and others. I don't remember one though where a president was actually putting money in his own pocket, like Donald Trump is doing, like with the crypto coins. You've got that going on. We've got this bizarre thing with a jet from Qatar, which may or may not happen. And Donald Trump's sons are making deals with sovereign funds in nations like UAE and Qatar, where the company that Trump still has ownership in is profiting. So first, let me just ask you before we talk about any of these, has there been a presidential scandal where a president was accused of actually making money for himself?
Well, there's been accusations of it. There were conservatives who went after Lyndon Johnson
Mhm.
for television stations Lady Bird, his wife, owned, but it was small potatoes. I mean, we're talking here of a very different kind of scandal in terms of magnitude because Lyndon Johnson was not a business person with huge holdings like this that intertwined not
Mhm.
with policy in Texas, but policy all around the world. So I do think it's fair to say the magnitude of this is unlike a teapot, dome scandal, anything with Nixon and money. This is a whole other level of kind of magnitude.
There was a report that came out recently, and the estimate is, and folks, I'm not kidding, that Trump and his family have made $3 billion, that their value has gone up and their net worth $3 billion since the election. And most of that's with crypto related because the property deals have just been signed. So and then Donald Trump's having at his Mar-a-Lago in a few weeks. If you hold a crypto coin, the Trump coin, which goes to him personally, this is not like a super PAC thing, Julian,
Right.
where you super PAC and you give money, it seems sleazy, but it's legal. This is if you hold the money in the top 25, get a very intimate tour of Mar-a-Lago, maybe even the White House gets thrown in. And what some ethics people like Nora Bookbinder and others raised, we don't even know where the money's coming from. Foreign governments could be peddling money, and Trump might know it at the end of the day. How concerning is it to watch this? And there's the fear of normalizing corruption now in America, part of America.
I think it was a concern in the first term, and it's a bigger one this time because I think he's being even more explicit about what he wants to do. And look, the Constitution does prohibit foreign governments from giving gifts, bribes, payments to U.S. officials, but it's not clear, like we're learning with so many things, that what the penalties are, how it's enforced. Congress certainly isn't going to do anything. And so then you're in a whole other world, and the president's willing to ignore legislation we have from the 1970s that deals with some of this, and it's very concerning. I think you said it exactly right. This is about money going directly to the president. It's not about raising money like a Lincoln bedroom Clinton type of scandal, and it's involving many different foreign governments, and we just don't know what's what. And here in the US with crypto, it involves big regulatory decisions where the lines are fuzzy. And so I think that's why the alarms are ringing. But again, we're in this situation where it's not clear who's supposed to do something or who will do something, I should say, because Congress has the muscle and Congress is not really looking into this.
Well, with Republicans controlling both chambers, it makes it
Right.
obviously difficult. But we all learned about the emoluments clause in the first term
Yep.
of Trump, which bans any gifts from a king, prince, or foreign country. In the case of the Qatari royal family giving Trump a jet, it
We
covered
have
all
that.
three. It's a king, a prince, and a foreign country. Like this is there are dictators around the world looking at Trump, going, "This guy's good. Like this is what we got to be doing." It is crazy. He's in Saudi Arabia today with getting deals for Elon Musk. Elon Musk got deals. I was watching that live. They let Elon Musk have access for Starlink. You're going to have the robotic cars. He pitched them the idea of his boring company is called for drilling for roads under the ground. And so Trump brings his top donor on a business tour, and they know it ingratiates ingratiate yourself with Donald Trump by giving his top donor more deals. Again, you're a historian. Can you recall a president taking their top donor like this to make this kind of money?
No, not like this. And the dangers that the founders envisioned are obvious. That
Mhm,
you're going to form public policy in this case. And again, there's lots of presidents where there's concerns they're making decisions for their political interests and to preserve power. This is purely about money, and the concern is you're going to have foreign policy decisions being driven by profit. You're going to see allies cut out because they're
mhm.
not willing to do this. And obviously, it has effects here domestically in terms of how money is allocated, how decisions are made. So, and then it's just so there's the actual practical implication, and then there's just it erodes the trust we can have in our institutions. I mean, how can you trust a president to do what's right if there's a lot of information that the president's doing things for self interest? And so, on both fronts, this is quite damaging. And this is, look, in 1978, we passed an ethics reform bill,
Mhm.
in part because of information about some of this kind of corruption, but again, not on this level at all. But now we're in a place where I don't know. I don't know how you think, but like, is the public going to react to what they're watching? But this is very dangerous.
Well, there is so much going on with Donald Trump that you wonder what the public watches and what they don't. This kind of brazen corruption. I can say that the plane, the $400 million plane from Qatar broke through. John Stewart was talking about it last night in the show. It's in the world of pop culture now, as well as politics. I wrote a Substack just yesterday. It came out. If people are interested in going to check it out, the Dean's report. It's not just the plane. I was writing this article before this. The plane was just the next thing. There were so many other things where he has profited from the White House now in ways we've never seen. I'm glad the plane broke through. Chuck Schumer, a short time ago on the Senate floor, said they're going to block DOJ
Mhm.
nominees because Pam Bondi signed off on it. Getting a $40 billion plane from a foreign country, that's not a violation of ethics rule. It's a joke. So I'm concerned, Julian, going forward, does this just change the path of American politics? Where in the future, it's of course just like a third world country or a dictatorship. You've got to give the king, the wannabe king president, gifts and they can profit from it. And that's all fine. That's not the United States anymore. And we are fighting, for those who believe in our republic, we are fighting to preserve this nation for being a republic and not becoming North American version of Russia or Turkey or Saudi Arabia, where the dictator just rules the way they want and profits personally.
Well, look, nothing is inevitable, and there are different kinds of bad moments we've had. Certainly, Nixon was corrupt in a different way, and the country did react, and even members of his own party ultimately reacted as well. And we tried to fix things, and it wasn't perfect, and some of
Mhm.
it's eroded, but we did do things. And there's other look after the Civil War as well. Reconstruction was a grand experiment to try to improve situations. So we shouldn't inevitably assume he wins or assume this becomes the pattern of politics. But that requires mobilization, that requires response, that requires legislative and judicial action because the danger is serious. You don't want to make this a precedent. That's the danger. This becomes normal. And so next presidents, Democratic or Republic, are like, oh, I guess we can do that now. And we see that in other parts of politics, like executive action has followed that. Every president just keeps doing it because that's what you can do. So this, though, is much more problematic, and that's why the urgency exists right now to figure out ways to stop this and to have a response that says not appropriate.
Everybody listening or reading articles, your articles, my articles, we all follow politics very closely. We all
Yeah.
understand this is very important to us. And I always wonder if our fellow Americans are paying attention. I was truly heartened to see the polling numbers around 100 days into Trump, that he had the lowest approval rating of any president in 100 days. And it wasn't low like compared to them, and oh, it's still pretty good. It was bad. I mean, we're talking about 40, 39, 38, 41, 42, along those lines. Is that significant from a political point of view and what could be meaningful in terms of his future agenda, getting Congress on board, and also just inspiring people to stand up more?
Well, it is. I think a lot of Republicans will feel he is never someone very loved, and he still can be successful within his party, uh, not being loved. And of course, by most accounts, he can't run for reelection. So that insulates him
You
a little bit. But it is
know,
significant because look, one thing is Republicans, especially kind of purplish Republicans in places like Long Island, New York, are watching. They can't afford anything. And they understand there are levels where their own power becomes threatened because of how poorly the president is standing. So I think in an era where majorities in the House are very narrow, even in the Senate, they're not huge, and in the presidential election, even this one's still pretty narrow. That's where that matters a lot. And I think also it just has an impact on how the public is perceiving it. Remember, a few months
right.
ago, everyone thought whatever he did, he's invulnerable. Whatever he did, people just loved. And the polls, if you believe in data, have punctured that. He's
Mhm.
not popular. What he's doing is not popular. He is president, he won, but his policies are not popular. And that's why he's struggling, backtracking. That's why he's getting pushback from Senator Josh Hawley on Medicaid, which is kind of unbelievable division. So I think that does matter, and we'll see where they go. We'll see how swings in the economy affect it, but I think he's certainly cognizant that the numbers are low.
Yeah, just one data point for people. If you're wondering how many House Republicans currently serve in districts that Vice President Harris actually won, it's only three. It's less than usual, but putting that aside, because that doesn't sound great, there are many others in districts that Biden had won in 2020. So they're swing districts. So that's why the pushback now in some of the proposed deep cuts in Medicaid just to give a tax cut to the wealthy. I mean, still what they're proposing right now, 8.6 million Americans would lose health insurance if you get it through Medicaid. It's very, very worrisome. So, Julian, I want to touch on something you wrote for foreign policy because you're unique that you truly are a historian, and a lot of times you watch cable news and it's more in the moment. But I think understanding history of where we were as a nation and where Trump wants to take us, which I really believe I view as a re-envisioning America. It truly is a top to bottom trying to do a gut renovation. If this was like a condo or a house, someone's trying to do a gut renovation of our nation and rebuild it consistent with a MAGA vision. But you wrote a really good article about Lyndon Johnson and the Higher Education Act of 1965, opening up access to education. And share a little bit for that because I love history a lot, and I hope people listening find it as intriguing as I do about where we were. And then it's like the light switch, the complete opposite now, where Trump wants to go.
Yeah, I mean, Lyndon Johnson came from a generation that really believed in what higher education did for the country, for citizenship, and for national security, and for the economy. In the 50s, he was the Senate Majority Leader, and he plays a big role in boosting federal funding for universities because they believe that that would make us stronger as a nation against communism. And in the Cold War, knowledge mattered, research mattered. And in 1965, as president, he pushes legislation, the Higher Education Act, which is the major loan program, eventually will be Pell Grants, that allows Americans to be able to afford higher education. And it vastly expands the number of working and middle class Americans who can go to college. And
Mhm.
what's remarkable is you read the signing statement and you just read the legislation. There was no doubt about how important this was to the health of the nation. And it's a counterpoint to where we are today, where the administration is going aggressively to try to undermine what universities do, to try to cut off funding for research, and to try to make it harder to afford going to college. And this is just the beginning. I mean, it's clear the plan is much bigger. So that moment with Lyndon Johnson, I think, is really important now to remember higher education isn't just something for a few people, it's
Mhm.
actually foundational to a strong country.
Yeah, in my case, I went to college and law school, and I used to be a lawyer. I was only able to afford college and law school because of one, Pell Grants for college, and then student loans for
Yeah.
both. I come from a middle class, actually probably slightly lower middle class, to be honest. At the time, my family, when I was getting ready to go to college, I would not been able to. And I
Mm.
don't know what I would have done. I don't know how different the trajectory of my life would have been, but I'm certainly happier that I have a law degree because it helps me navigate through life. I can't tell you how many times a day I tell people, like, you know what, I'm a lawyer, buddy, so I'll see you in court, which I just love saying to people. They're like, why are you saying this? You're just ordering food at McDonald's. I'm like, I know. All right. But so now the House GOP budget plan, and they just released it, folks. It's an outline. Right now they're doing markups, which they're actually in committee as we sit here now, mark up the House bills. We'll see what the Senate does. It takes an axe to student loan programs. They really are going after it. And the student loan the forgiveness program of Biden, it just would gut it completely. So explain to people why the hostility. It's not just Trump, but why the hostility of so many on the right to higher education. When people like Josh Hawley went to Ivy League schools, and Ted Cruz went to Princeton, where you teach, went to Ivy League, law schools. So many went to Ivy League schools or really good schools, and now they just want to prevent others. They don't care about making it easier for people to go up the ladder. They want to take the ladder up. They have a hostility to education that is off the charts. So why?
Yeah, look, some of it's just a broader slash and burn mentality for everything, and they're going after every part of government they can to cut. Part of it is what you said. It's combined in their mind with this social safety net idea that this is how government helps people, and they don't want that as a key. And part of it is I think, a lot of the administration, even though most of them went to universities,
Yeah.
select universities, state universities, they see it as oppositional, that this is something like a person or a law firm that they need to cut down. And it's also something they want to control. I do think they understand ideas matter. And so there's the ideas they want to try to stop, and there's also the ideas they want to have a bigger role in. But in doing all of this, they actually are doing it in a way that will just really erode what these institutions can do and how many people can access them. So it's damaging. And in a moment, I'll just add practically, when we are in a knowledge based economic era, and that's the competition, it's really self-destructive to do this, to erode science and
Yep.
technology and all the research we need to actually compete, which is what his whole campaign was about. So I think all of that is running around at the White House as a driving motivation.
And you wonder if there's also a hardball political calculation in that people know that the last time a Democrat running for president won the white vote, a majority, was LBJ in '64. But even Vice President Harris, while she lost white men and white women, she won white men and white women who had a college degree.
Right, right.
And and there's all different arguments for why. Is it, you could say the obvious one, well, they know critical thinking skills, they're better informed, they Google, but also they're connected with higher education, often is more economic opportunity. So you've got a different layer to it. It's not just the most simple, superficial one. Oh, I could Google you. There's other things going on that are more societal. But I wonder if Republicans see that. So they like, we're not going to support college because for whatever reason, the people don't go to college and love us. People go to college and beyond are like Democrats.
It could. I mean, the reality is these colleges and universities, which are getting hit by the funding cuts, matter in the reddest of states. Both, community colleges and state colleges remain a path forward for a lot of, it's not a majority, but it's still a lot of voters. It's economically an engine often, even in a state like Mississippi. Uh, the colleges really are hubs for commerce. They often provide research for agriculture. They're often the first line for medical
Mhm.
treatment that people go to. And so it's a little like the Medicaid debate. I think the more they get into the details, they're going to be a little surprised that it's not just them that is being cut. It's their own people. So this is a high risk maneuver, in my opinion, and I don't think it's as clear cut as a red blue issue.
I saw it's interesting in seeing the laundry list of things in the mega bill they're calling it. One is no taxes on tips. So I'm going to tell everyone just pay me by tips from now on, folks. No more income. Everything I get from SiriusXM or Substack, anything's just a tip. Just give it in a bag and go, good job, Dean. Like the abuse is, I know they're going to try to limit it, but that is so ripe for abuse. And you can see Wall Street executives or Wall Street hedge fund guys going, my bonus is a tip at the end of the year. And they're going to have to deal with that. So, one big thing here, Julian, is there's a big push by obviously Trump and MAGA to reinvent America in a certain way. And we know that they like Viktor Orban in Hungary. And Project 2025, that everyone's familiar with. So much of that reads like what they've done in Hungary. Viktor Orban, famously the leader of Hungary, has talked about he wanted to create an illiberal democracy, illiberal, ILLEBERL, which means not a robust one. And he seems he's done that. Do you think that's the goal of Trump and MAGA to make America very much like Hungary, where you can have national elections, you're never going to win that, but you can win local elections. So there is some trappings of democracy, but it's really rigged so much on the national level, you're not going to win the big presidential elections.
Well, look, we know there is a fascination, not just with Trump, but with Republicans with Orban. So it's not a secret. They talk about it. They went, they some go there, and
Right.
he is really revered at conservative meetings and gatherings. I don't know what the goal is. I don't know if they think let's have an autocratic country, but we do know they believe in kind of the strong leader, very strong leader, unbound, and I think that is what President Trump wants. And there's a willingness to not tolerate and actually hurt institutions that are seen as dangerous and that are seen as alternative paths to think about what America is. And it's clear to me that's part of what he's doing very systematically. He sees them as enemies, he sees them as adversaries. He's seeking retribution and he's seeking to insulate himself. And um, again, I don't know exactly where it's going or what the playbook is, but there's enough of a rhyme there to understand the effects can be very similar.
And last thing, and this is from a historical point of view as historians, both Democrat and Republican parties, and parties that are gone, the Whig Party's gone, the Federalist Party's gone, No Nothing Party's gone, they evolved. The Democratic Party was one time the party of segregation. That's true. There's
Yep.
no disputing that. It's not happy to know that's the history of the party I'm part of now. We've evolved. The GOP was a different party. When you see MAGA now, is it not a phase? Is this a new iteration and the GOP is what MAGA is until there's another leader down the road and maybe takes the party in a different direction?
I mean, yes, it is what it is at this point. It's much deeper than Trump, and Trump, I've argued many times, is a product of decades of change. It doesn't mean, look, if you had said in the 1930s and 40s the Democrats would ultimately kind of get rid of the Dixiecrat, Jim Crow, Southern contingent, it would have seemed impossible. They were the power brokers within the party, and they are not anymore. And the party
Mhm.
changed on civil rights. So that is still possible. And I don't think we should discount it because, again, it's that inevitability that just stops everything. But right now, it's deeply rooted, and that gets to your point. It would take a huge generational change, not just a leader change, to have a different kind of conservative Republican presence that doesn't have just institutional damage and strong arm control as a mission. It's possible, but it will take a long time. That is a kind of historical process that has to happen.
We both used to write for CNN, and I wrote an article, I remember in 2012, during the GOP primary, where the fight was Mitt Romney versus Newt Gingrich, which is almost like and you're an expert on Gingrich, but in a way to me, it was a precursor to MAGA. And I wrote how they're probably going to lose to Obama anyway. And if I was a Republican and I wanted this to be more of a mainstream party, I would let Newt Gingrich or one of those far right people get the nomination and lose because if Romney gets a nomination and loses, it'll lay the pathway for a more radical or more far right party. And I'm not like a magician or something. I'm not, a fortune teller. But that seemed to me what would happen this naturally in politics, and that was part of what we saw. Because 2016 comes here, Donald Trump runs against Romney, runs against Bush, runs against a little bit like against Reagan, certainly now against Reagan, and now we have this new party. So parties are dynamic and they do move. So, well, Julian, it was good seeing you, my friend. And Julian's Substack is The Long View. If you don't subscribe, check it out. Of course,
Thank
cheap
you.
plug. Mine is called The Dean's Report. So I hope you'll subscribe to that one. It's all free stuff. And thanks so much for tuning in and chatting for Julian, you chatting with us, and everyone else who tuned in to hear our conversation. Really appreciate you. Thanks very much. Have a great day.
Thanks so much.